Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast from Agriland that keeps you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined by Aisling O'Brien and Agriland dairy specialist Hugh Harney. It's been a busy week on the agri-news front and we have plenty to get through. The controversy over proposed charges by the online mart viewing and bidding platform LSL Auctions continued this week, with the business telling Agriland yesterday, Wednesday, that there will be no charge for existing customers of each mart to view or bid on the online platform for that specific mart or marts where they are customers. We have also seen an extension to the deadline for applications to the National Genotyping Programme. Farmers themselves or their advisors on their behalf now have until next Tuesday, August 27th, to apply. You can read more about these stories on Agriland.ie and on the Agriland app, but the main talking point we wanted to kick off with this week is the government's plan to retain the nitrates derogation. The plan pulls together a range of measures, some of which are already underway and some of which are yet to come on stream, and includes actions by government, industry and farmers. Aisling, this is pretty complicated. Can you break it down for us?
Yes, Charles, we'll take just a brief step back before we talk about the plan. And look, a lot of farmers out there are well aware that it's actually in the EU Commission's gift and not the Irish government's to decide if we can renew our nitrates derogation beyond 2025. Now, the EU Commission has been clear that Ireland must show that water quality that is good must remain stable, and water quality that is less than good must show improvements in order to secure that derogation again. And as we've seen previously, Charles, the Commission isn't afraid to take action on this topic. They already dropped our derogation in certain parts of the country from 250 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year down to a limit of 220. And the challenge now is to maintain that. European Commissioner for the Environment, Virginia Sinkevičius, who visited Ireland late last year, we were told this week, is going to return with his officials in September to see the progress that is being made on water quality by farmers and by industry as well. So ahead of that visit, Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Charlie McConalogue, has published this official plan to progress the objective of retaining Ireland's nitrates derogation beyond next year. And he said that he, along with Minister Darragh O'Brien, and it's actually Darragh O'Brien's Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage that the nitrates regulations are actually administered under, they have secured a whole of government approach on this topic, and they brought that memo to Cabinet earlier this year that we spoke about. And this is the outcome of that now. And as you said, this document that has been produced this week, there's a range of actions contained in it, some of which will be familiar to farmers, some of which are very much underway. And it's all titled Water and Agriculture, a Collaborative Approach. So they're telling us that there'll be 50 water quality advisors paid for by the government and industry who are providing a free service to farmers to improve water quality in priority areas. A €60 million European Innovation Programme, an EIP, has already been put in place to financially support actions by farmers on the ground. There's also a Better Farming for Water advisory programme put in place by Teagasc. The plan also outlines the 70% grant under the Nutrient Importation Storage Scheme, essentially farmers who import slurry. This grant will be towards providing facilities for that. That was outlined in last year's budget, Charles, and it opened for applications this week to coincide with the plan. We might come back to that in just a little while. The plan also says there'll be a new and separate exempted development threshold for standalone slurry storage, which will be provided as part of a review of planning regulations, which will come as, I suppose, a lot of solace to farmers out there who've been, battling trying to get such projects over the line on their farms. And there'll also be a sanction sought from the European Commission to apply for a 60% grant and separate ceiling of €90,000 for farmers for nutrient storage from 2025, January of 2025. Now, the department also confirmed that John Comer, a farmer and a past president of the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association, the ICMSA, has been appointed as chair of the Agriculture Water Quality Group as well. So it will be interesting, you know, Charles. There's a lot of items in the plan which farmers will be already aware of, but it is good that we're making progress on, you know, the slurry import grant and less as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Aisling. And there have been developments on less slurry spreading, low emission slurry spreading, and the nutrient storage scheme that you mentioned. Can you take us through some of those developments?
Yes, Charles. So the nutrient importation storage scheme is going to be made available under TAMS 3, of course, the Targeted Agricultural Modernisation Schemes. It's going to provide a 70% grant rate for additional storage facilities for farmers who are managing the importation of organic fertilisers. And the scheme will have its own dedicated investment ceiling of €90,000 per holding, solely for the purpose, though, of imported slurry storage. And for partnership applications, an investment ceiling of €160,000 per holding will apply. Now, investment items will be limited to circular slurry stores, geomembrane-lined stores and manure pits to ensure the facility will continue to be available for slurry importation. And eligible applicants must have a contract in place to import slurry, which should outline the volume of organic fertilisers being imported onto the farm. And of course, more details on Agriland about that scheme. And as you said as well, the low emission slurry spreading scheme, the minister amended terms and conditions of that scheme this week to allow access for all farmers who are farming at a stocking rate of less than 170 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. He said that will allow all applicants received from January 1st to become eligible for less investments. And the minister is also introducing changes to the rules surrounding the permanent fencing of watercourses, which he said will also allow this investment to be available for all farmers as well. So look, it is a step forward as well, a step in the right direction there. I think when grant aid and supports are put in place, we have seen that farmers are willing to take the actions, Charles, on the ground to improve water quality and safeguard it. So look, hopefully this is a step in the right direction. We've been waiting a long time for that slurry import scheme from last year's budget, but it's now up and running and accepting applications from this week.
Now, this plan that Minister McConalogue announced this week, it coincides with a report from the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, Food and the Marine on the same topic, namely the derogation. Did this report feed in any way to the government's plan? And what's been the reaction to the plan by the members of that committee?
Now, Senator Tim Lombard, who's a member of the Oireachtas Committee, told Agriland this week that the timing of the new department plan came as a total surprise to him. He said that they had assumed that the departments were going to look at their report, which he said is quite comprehensive, and take the considerations and the issues contained in it and then tie it into the actual overall master plan. And he said you'd have to question, was there any consideration of the report at all, or was it just already preordained regarding the actual so-called roadmap, he said. And he said he was concerned about if even the departments had looked at the report. He said personally he didn't think that they had. He just felt that they had their own ideals and they went ahead with those. So he said the focus now has to be moving forward from this. He was very sceptical, as I said, about the timing of the report coming out, very close to the committee's report as well. But he said that he hoped that serious consideration would be given to a key recommendation contained in the committee's report, which called for the establishment of an interdepartmental task force chaired by the Department of the Taoiseach. And he said that would be very important. And I suppose it would throw an awful lot of weight behind any sort of endeavours at a European level as well, in his mind.
Yeah, very interesting comments from Tim Lombard there, Aisling, for sure. Just before we move on, and while we're on the topic of government schemes and measures, the €5,000 Climate Action Performance Payment, which is aimed at landowners with ash plantations impacted by ash dieback, is now open for applications. You can find out all the details about that on our article on it this week. Moving on, and ahead of Budget 2025, it appears there is a proposal on the cards from Finance Minister Jack Chambers to defer the implementation of the controversial Residential Zoned Land Tax, or RZLT. The proposal has been welcomed by many politicians as well as farm organisations, but not everyone is happy about it, Aisling.
No, not everybody is, from the opposition benches in Sinn Féin, but also the government coalition partners, the Green Party, not happy about this either. Look, I suppose the RZLT, it's going to be applied at a rate of 3% of the land's market value, and it's aimed at increasing housing supply by essentially activating zoned and serviced residential development lands for housing. It's all part of the government's efforts to address the ongoing housing crisis in this country. But as you rightly said, since its inception, farming organisations and many politicians as well, to be fair, have been very vocal and have raised concerns that actively farmed agricultural land on the outskirts of urban settlements could also fall within the scope of this tax. So as you said, the news came this week that we have a proposal on the table that this RZLT is going to be deferred for 1 year to ensure that active farmland will be excluded. Now, it was due to come into force from February 1st of next year, so that's all been put back now again. And speaking to reporters, including Agriland's Breffney O'Brien at the Virginia show in Cavan on Wednesday, Taoiseach Simon Harris said that the government needs to do two things here, and they're both equally important. He said we need to have a tax in place in relation to land hoarding. That's important. We do have a housing crisis, but we also need to make sure that active farmers are recognised as such. And he said it was offensive to describe an active farmer as a land hoarder. And he said he thinks that people across the country understand the difference between somebody hoarding land and looking for it to appreciate in value and somebody who's farming and producing a product on a daily basis. Now, the Fianna Fáil Tipperary TD and chair of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, Jackie Cahill, spoke to Agriland this week on this issue, and he said that work is underway to develop a new system for the RZLT, which will exclude active farmers from its scope. And he said, in his opinion, pausing and deferring this tax by a year and designing a new system that excludes active farmland will give certainty to farmers. And he felt that it would protect both farmland and food production as well. Now, we heard from a spokesperson from the Minister for Agriculture, Charlie McConalogue, who said that the Minister had welcomed this proposal as well. They said that the Minister had continuously advocated on this issue with his government colleagues about his concerns about the impact of the tax on active farmers as well. And he said he welcomed a move towards a final resolution for farmers on this issue. Now, the President of the Irish Farmers Association, the IFA, Francie Gorman, said that the deferral of the tax is a step forward. And he said that it had been causing unnecessary stress and huge worry for many farm families around the country who were due to be impacted by what he called an unaffordable taxation measure. And he added that farmers, Charles, should never have been included in this tax in the first place. And look, we have covered it on Agriland that many farmers across the country up to this point have actually had to lodge appeals against the inclusion of their lands on draft local authority or ZLT maps to onboard Planola. And of course, that would have taken time, effort, and there would have been a cost involved with that as well. So, that's all added to the stress out there. The Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association said as well that farmers would be reassured by this proposal to defer the RZLT for a year. And Sean McNamara, the ICSA president, said they had also consistently opposed including actively farmed land in this tax measure as well. Now, Senator Victor Boyhan, who's a member as well of the Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, also welcomed the deferral of actively farmed land from the RZLT. And interestingly, he believes that an upcoming general election has clearly brought this contentious issue to the fore. Now, of course, the Taoiseach is maintaining it's going to be next year when we go to the polls, but we'll wait and see. As you said, though, Charles, not everybody happy about this, including the Green Party. They took to social media this week saying everybody in government agrees that we need at least 50,000 new homes every year. And they said that's not going to be possible if we let speculators sit on land zoned for development and serviced with infrastructure such as electricity wires, water supplies and transport. And going to the opposition benches then, Sinn Féin's spokesperson on finance, Pearse Doherty, criticised the decision to postpone the RZLT. He said that the government's decision to delay a land tax that is aimed at land hoarders who are sitting on land that should be developed to build much needed houses is a disgraceful one. He said, let's be clear, this is a direct result of the government's abject failure over the past 3 years to exempt actively farmed land from this tax. So a lot of interesting reaction this week, but I think a lot of farmers out there will breathe a sigh of relief that the government has delayed the implementation of this tax to allow for them to escape the net, so to speak.
Yeah, Aisling, I suppose there's definitely strong arguments on both sides. It's an important tax, but you want things like this to be implemented properly, I suppose. And I suppose the concern would be that, so close to a general election, something like this would become a political football almost.
Well, absolutely. And if you see disagreement between the coalition partners on this, obviously it seems that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil seem in favour of the deferral, but the Green Party seem very strongly against it at this point. So it'll be interesting times ahead, but it looks like that is very much so on the table as we head towards the budget.
Absolutely, Aisling. Now, at the start of today's show, we spoke of the government's plan to try to retain the nitrates derogation, which of course is of vital importance to dairy farmers specifically. But it wasn't the only news this week that will exercise the attention of dairy farmers. Authorities in China have announced that they are to begin an anti-subsidy investigation into some of the EU dairy products that it imports. Aisling, what exactly did the Chinese authorities say this week?
Yes, Charles. Well, this all is part of ongoing trade tensions between China and the EU. The European Commission had launched its own anti-subsidy investigation into the Chinese electric vehicle industry, and this week it announced a draft decision to impose duties on the imports of electric vehicle batteries from China. Now, back in June, Chinese authorities had launched an anti-dumping investigation into pork products originating from the EU on the back of this electric vehicle investigation that the Commission were undertaking, if you can keep up with this. And in recent months, it had also been flagged that the Chinese authorities would also be turning their attention to the EU dairy industry. And as you said, the Ministry of Commerce of China on Wednesday announced that it had begun an investigation into subsidies paid to European dairy farmers. Now, it said the investigation would include 20 EU subsidy schemes, including an Irish scheme, which is referred to in a translated version of this document or this statement on the ministry's website as the Dairy Equipment Subsidy Scheme. And I suppose that is likely to refer to the Dairy Equipment Scheme, which is part of TAMS. So currently it's understood that the Chinese investigation relates to a subsector of dairy products. Those include liquid milk with fat content exceeding 10% and different types of cheeses. Now, according to the notice issued by the Chinese authorities, it's believed that the scope of this investigation will not currently include powdered milk. And the investigation is set to last for a year, but those authorities said it could be extended for up to 6 months after that under special circumstances. Now, the Commission told Agriland this week that it took note of the decision of the Chinese authorities to launch this investigation. They said they'll follow the proceedings very closely, and the Commission said they will firmly defend the interests of the EU dairy industry and the Common Agricultural Policy. And they said they would intervene as appropriate to ensure that the investigation fully complies with relevant World Trade Organization rules. Now, stakeholders within China, as well as governments of other countries, can actually apply to take part in this investigation. And that would allow them to make submissions to the Chinese authorities. We've already seen that the Department of Agriculture here will be part of the pork investigation. And I imagine that the same is going to happen as well for the dairy investigation. Now, in a statement to Agriland, Minister Charlie McConlogue said that he is aware of this announcement. He said he's going to be engaging with the EU Commission to ensure it has all of the data necessary insofar as Ireland is concerned to resolve any issues raised in the proposed investigation. And he said that he was satisfied that European and Irish dairy exports are fully compliant with World Trade Organization rules. Now, interestingly, the minister is due to lead a government trade mission to China in the coming weeks. And the overall value of Irish dairy exports to that country stood at €420 million in 2023. Now, that was a drop of 5% on the previous year, but it is still a significant amount of exports over to China. So it's something that we want to make sure that isn't impacted by any of these moves. Now, Dairy Industry Ireland, the IBEC Association, which represents primary and secondary dairy manufacturers, including the specialised nutrition sector in this country, expressed disappointment at the decision by China to launch this investigation, and they called on the EU Commission and the Irish government to work quickly to resolve this investigation and ensure that farm families and the industry are not negatively impacted. And Conor Mulvihill, the director of DII, said that the Irish dairy industry produces and exports in full compliance with EU and World Trade Organization rules. And he said that while any threat of trade disruption is unwelcome and China is an important market for both EU and Irish dairy, he said Irish dairy is well diversified in its product mix and destination countries. And he said at present, the Chinese complaint relates just to that subsector of dairy products such as cheeses. And most of Ireland's cheese exports are actually directed at the UK and EU markets. And Charles, farm organisations have also been reacting to this announcement. The ICMSA said that exports of Irish dairy produce could not be used as collateral damage in trade tensions between the EU EU and China. The ICMSA President Dennis Drennan said that this dispute between the EU and China is completely unrelated to Irish dairy. And he said that food exports were going to be held hostage in a dispute that isn't even related to our sector. And he warned that the loss or any kind of negative impact on exports would be a savage blow at a time when farmers are dealing with low prices, really poor weather conditions, and years of high input costs as well. The IFA echoed those sentiments, Charles, saying that Irish dairy farmers cannot become the fall guys in a trade dispute between China and the European Union. Francie Gorman, the IFA president, said that dairy farmers had already suffered from trade tariffs in 2019 following a dispute between the EU and the US on trade. He said that outcome has to be avoided this time round, and he also called on Minister McConalogue to make sure that he uses the opportunity of that trade mission in the coming weeks to China to assure officials there that our dairy products are not in breach of World Trade Organization rules and should not be treated unfairly from a tariff perspective.
Thanks for taking us through that, Aisling, because it does sound pretty complex. Just while we're on dairy, we'll just bring to your attention that the Global Dairy Trade Index saw somewhat of a return to form this week, with the index increasing by 5.5%. More locally, all the main Irish milk processors have announced their milk prices for July, with prices increasing pretty much across the board. Moving on, and the Virginia show took place yesterday on Wednesday, which included, of course, the prestigious Diageo Bailey's Irish Champion Dairy Cow competition. Hugh, you were at the Virginia show yesterday. Can you describe the day for those who may be unfamiliar with the show?
The Virginia show took place yesterday, where all eyes were on the highly contested Bailey's Cow competition, and it brought very impressive crowds to see the lineup of cows. The show marked the 39th Diageo Bailey's Cow competition, and to be honest, yesterday now it was a soft enough day with rain coming and going kind of all day, but crowds stuck around right to the end of the competition. The show attracts breeders from across the island, with some of the top Holstein Friesian cows in the country taking part. The competition is fondly known as like the All Ireland for dairy cows, and as usual, like there was so much at stake for the owners of these great cows. A win in the show ring at the Bailey's Cows is kind of like the ultimate form of promotion for any breeders. You know, you see it in the ring, there's just huge pride in representing their counties, and it was just like it was seen so vividly there. This year's Diageo Bailey's Champion Cow was judged by a man by the name of Marcus Mock, who is from Germany. His farm is situated just right outside Lake Constance in Germany. And to be fair to him now, he was brilliant on the day. He gave really good reasons for like why he was choosing certain cows, and like he was just really insightful. You could tell he was just full of knowledge with the Holstein Friesian cows. So yeah, he runs a family farm of about 135 cows. His herd of Holsteins has 100 cows classified as excellent, and he has won 3 German national champions, so like that just tells you all you need to know about him. The 2024 Diageo Bailey's Irish Champion Dairy Cow was awarded to Greenlee MG Rhapsody EX96 of the Greenlee Holsteins herd from County Monaghan. Interestingly enough, this champion cow was actually the oldest cow in the ring. She was born in January 2015, making her 9 years of age, which is just unbelievable. The owners of the winning cow, Porrick and Brendan Greenan, were awarded a prize of €3,000 and took home the Virginia Milk Products Cup from the show. At the reception after, you could actually see the emotion and passion from Porrick. As he said, winning the competition is what dreams are made of, and like that was just really nice to see. So then after that, moving on, the judge Marcus Mock selected Knowlesmere Jones Unix Victoire VG as reserve champion at the 2024 Bailey's Cow competition. Some of these names are quite a mouthful, so this cow is from the Jones and Knowlesmere herd from County Wexford. Again, she was just another fabulous cow. And look, overall, the day, it was just a brilliant day out. And as I said, there was just serious cows on show. And to be honest, it was just a real good kind of good atmosphere, unbelievable passion and spirit being shown from owners and onlookers in the crowds.
Thanks for that, Hugh. And don't forget that you can catch up on all the results, dairy and beef, from this year's Virginia show on Agriland.ie and the Agriland app. Finally this week, And staying with competitions and awards, and fresh off Ireland's successful Olympics, we followed that up with big wins in the World Ploughing Contest in Estonia. Aisling, maybe this didn't get quite the same coverage as the Olympics, but very good news for Ireland here.
Well, I tell you, if we had ploughing at the Olympics, we would be sweeping the podiums and getting gold medals here, there and everywhere, because we had another double success for the Republic of Ireland team at the World Ploughing Contest in Estonia, which was held last weekend. And I suppose it cements our country's reputation as true ploughing masters on the global stage as well. It was the 69th Championships, and it saw Eamon Tracy from County Carlow crowned the world champion in the conventional class for the third consecutive year, I may add, and Cork man Ger Coakley, who was the reversible world champion. Now, the historic result means that our country has now retained the conventional and reversible world titles for 3 years in a row. We have done the double for the last 3 years in a row. The Republic of Ireland team this year were coached by Wexford man Michael Roach, and the group spent 2 weeks training in Estonia ahead of the championships, and it certainly paid off. And also travelling with the Irish team this year was Larry Bergen from South Tipperary, who was a judge at the World Ploughing Contest as well. Now, the newly crowned world champions returned to a hero's welcome, very befitting of their achievement in Dublin Airport earlier this week. And Agriland caught up with Eamon Tracy and with Ger Coakley as well. And Eamon has actually now won 6 world titles since 2014. Understandably, he was delighted with his result this year, but he has such a track record. He's actually been at every world contest since 2012. And he's actually been on the podium every year in either first, second or third position since that time. So he really is so experienced and so talented in the ploughing fields. He farms at home in Garryhill with his son Sean, who was looking after everything at home while Eamon was over in Estonia. They have a tillage operation. They also rear replacement dairy heifers, and they do some contracting work as well. But it wasn't all plain sailing for Eamon this time around, Charles. He had to work very hard for the overall title, because he actually ended up after the first day of competitions in joint 4th place, and he had a lot of work to do to make up some ground, excuse the pun, but he said that the importance of a positive mindset and his experience came into play on the second day. He put the head down, he did as well as he could, and he actually did better than he expected. And his result on the second day, his win, was by such a margin, it saw him leapfrog from joint 4th into first position overall and reclaim his world title. Ger Coakley, on the other hand, who has dry stock and a tillage farm in Cork near Clonakilty, he also does some contracting too, just to keep him even more busy than normal. He had a great experience in Estonia, a really commanding experience. He is the reigning European champion, and he lived up to that title on the world stage because he won both days in both the grassland and the stubble fields. It was his second time competing at the World Ploughing Contest, but he last competed there about 12 years ago. So it was a great way to re-announce himself on the world stage in 2024 as well. Now, he said that his plots were very good, and obviously that stood to him as well. He took full advantage of his draw on the field as well. And understandably, Charles, congratulations have been flooding in from home and abroad. Anna May McHugh, the managing director of the NPA, who was over there, the National Ploughing Association, they were in Estonia and they helped the team with transporting over tractors and everything that needed to go over. She said it was a fantastic win for both men and that they'd done their country extremely proud. And Anna May's daughter, Anna Marie McHugh, who's the General Secretary of the World Ploughing Organisation, said that Ireland have always been highly respected internationally in terms of producing ploughmen to compete on the world stage. She said it was another great result for our country and Ireland's global reputation as true ploughing masters in their field. And look, Charles, there won't be much time for either Eamon or Ger to rest on their laurels. The National Ploughing Championships in County Laois are fast approaching in mid-September. And along with bidding to defend his national title, Eamon's actually part of the team who are going to be marking out the over 390 plots that are going to be needed for the 3 days of ploughing competitions in Ratheniska. And interestingly, both Eamon and Ger agreed, Charles, that actually the National Ploughing Championships, the competition there is actually nearly stiffer than the World Ploughing Championships, because he said that we're actually ploughing against the best in the world here, because that's why our standard is so high here in Ireland. It takes a lot to get out of this country and to get onto the world stage. But yeah, it's all to play for in Ratheniska in a couple of weeks, and it'll make for some great action out on the ploughing fields, no doubt. And we'll be there to follow it all here on Agriland.
Yeah, Aisling, congratulations to both men, and roll on Ratheniska, I suppose. That just about brings us to the end of today's podcast. Before we go, be sure to check out our article on Thomas Daly, who, after several years of renovation work, is showcasing his Porsche 108 Junior tractor, which he will be taking to machinery and agricultural shows around the country. We know a lot of listeners of the Farming Week have a passion for vintage machines, so you're sure to enjoy that article on Agriland.ie and the Agriland app. But we'll leave it there for today. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow the Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share the Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Aisling, Hugh and myself, enjoy the weekend.